What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I share all of the important stats for every one of the weapons in Black Ops Cold War's multiplayer, and in today's video, we're not actually covering a gun, we are covering the brand new R1 Shadowhunter Crossbow. And this episode's obviously going to be very different from my other gun guides, because it does behave very differently, but let's hop into damage just like we always do. The R1 Shadowhunter deals exactly 150 damage anywhere in the body, including the head. There's no multiplier anywhere for this, which in the vast majority of situations doesn't make a difference because it's a one-shot kill at all ranges. We have 150 health in this game, and this deals 150 damage. After damage, another really important stat is the bolt velocity, which is 115 meters per second. And while this isn't nearly as fast as the guns in this game, because they're obviously shooting bullets instead of a bolt out of a crossbow, it's really not all that bad. We've definitely had slower velocities in the past with crossbows in Call of Duty. But after that, we have our rate of fire, which is just 24 rounds per minute. This is extremely slow. It takes a lot of time between shots, and therefore, if you're in an actual gunfight and you miss your shot, you're most likely going to be dead, and that's the biggest downside to using this. It's extremely unforgiving. But circling back to velocity a little bit, I wanted to actually look at the trajectory as well, because you do lob this crossbow bolt a decent amount, and it is important to understand how high, or in some cases how low, you have to aim on your target in order to hit exactly where you want to hit. So if you're standing on flat ground and aiming straight forward, you're not aiming upward or downward at all, and you are standing, this is your point of aim line. However, the bolt obviously doesn't travel in a perfectly straight line. In fact, it actually aims upward a little bit, so anything in close quarters, you have to actually aim a little bit below where you want it to hit. So if you're at like 10 meters, for instance, you typically want to be aiming upper torso or neck in order to get a headshot, because if you aim directly at the head, the bolt will actually go above their head. So it starts off by going upwards a little bit. Then what I found is the crossbow is zeroed at 30 meters. So if your target's at 30 meters, you want to aim directly at that target, and that's where your bolt will hit. And then beyond that, again, if you're standing up, aiming straight forward without aiming up or down at all, and you're on flat ground, that bolt will travel exactly 50 meters before hitting the ground. So yeah, on most of the 6v6 maps and most of the situations you'll be finding yourself in, you should likely be within about 30 meters or so. So normally you just want to be aiming either directly at your target, or in more close quarter situations, just realize that bolt is going to end up hitting higher than your point of aim. Speaking of aiming with this, I wanted to see just how accurate it is to fire this bolt. Is there any sort of randomness while aiming down sight? So what I did here is I got myself at exactly 30 meters. I aimed right at the middle of that X on the wall. And keep in mind, there's a very slight variance here just due to idle sway. But after firing all of these shots into that exact point, keeping in mind this is right where the crossbow is zeroed, you can see that it is very, very accurate. My grouping is super tight here, and any variance is just down to idle sway. So that's good to know. The crossbow is perfectly accurate while aiming down sight. However, what does it look like when we hip fire it? I performed this exact same test, and again, the crossbow is still zeroed at exactly 30 meters from your center dot, so that's good to know as well. And what I found here is it's actually still pretty accurate while hip firing. There's obviously some spread here, a little bit of randomness, but that's really not bad at all. I would say I'm quite confident hip firing people within about 20 meters or so. Anywhere within 20 meters, you're most likely still going to be hitting the character model as long as your point of aim is on target. And I would even go so far as to say that you should absolutely be hip firing this thing within about 10 to 15 meters. Any target within about 10 to 15 meters, you basically can't miss them with hip fire as long as you're on target when you pull that, unless of course there's a ton of movement involved, and then that's just down to the bolt velocity maybe throwing you off. Now, moving on, let's have a look at our handling, and we've actually got pretty impressive handling here. Our aim down sight time is just 217 milliseconds, which is faster than all of the SMGs, and our sprint out time is exactly the same at 217 milliseconds, which is again, very, very fast for this game. Then after that, I want to have a look at movement speed, and this is really impressive. It turns out the R1 Shadowhunter gives you the best movement speed out of any ranged weapon in the entire game, including pistols and SMGs. This is faster than all of them. Our base movement speed is about 102%, our sprint movement speed is almost 150%, and also while aiming down sight, we got a very impressive aim down sight stray speed at 80%. So mobility is definitely a huge upside with this, and therefore even using a crossbow as a secondary just to get good opening routes is a very good idea. You're going to be moving faster than anybody with a pistol, for instance. And with that, that covers it for sort of the base stats of the crossbow. However, there's a bunch of other things I wanted to test and share with you guys because it obviously has some very unique characteristics and there's a lot of questions surrounding it. One of the first questions I had is, do you show up on the radar when firing the crossbow? And it turns out you don't. So that's great news. It is very stealthy to be using a crossbow, as it should be. Next up, something quite interesting I noticed is the interaction with the crossbow versus trophy systems. It turns out trophy systems will block a crossbow bolt. And this is something I personally don't agree with at all. I don't think trophy systems should block a crossbow bolt, but at least in the game's current state, they do. So that is a potential counter if you run into somebody that's really good with a crossbow. Start using trophy systems, I guess. And then I wanted to test the crossbow against a few key streaks. The first one is a UAV. I wanted to see if maybe this was like a one-shot kill versus a UAV, as long as you can manage to hit it. And I tested this a bunch, not just the footage that you're seeing now. I've tested this a bunch beyond that as well, and I could never hit a UAV with the bolt. So I don't think it's even possible, or if it is, it's so incredibly difficult that it wouldn't even be worth trying. Then, out of curiosity, I wanted to see how the crossbow would go against a ground-based streak, so I used the sentry gun here, and it turns out the crossbow is basically useless against the sentry gun. Even after hitting 5 bolts in a row, it still required 3 magazines from an XM4 to finish off that sentry gun. So don't even bother wasting your bolts on a sentry gun. It does basically nothing to it. But finally, for my score streak testing, I wanted to see how this fared against enemies that are using the armor score streak. And it turns out armor will protect you against a crossbow. As long as that crossbow is hitting you in the body and not the head, you will survive a crossbow bolt. However, it will completely destroy your armor and deal some damage to you as well. And it is also worth noting that even though there isn't a headshot multiplier with the crossbow, with the way that armor works, it simply doesn't protect your head at all, and therefore the crossbow is still a one-shot kill to the head against an armored player. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for all of the characteristics of the crossbow that I wanted to cover in today's video. However, one other thing I wanted to point out, for anybody that has the crossbow unlocked and they want to level it up as fast as possible, I highly recommend taking this into zombies. I know I'm not a zombies channel, I almost never even mention zombies on this channel, but once you pack-a-punch the crossbow, it is incredibly powerful, and you will level this up so much faster in zombies than most people would be able to do in multiplayer. So if you're planning on getting all of the multiplayer camos unlocked for the crossbow, I personally would recommend maxing it out first in zombies. You can actually do it very quickly in zombies, especially with a double weapon XP token, and then start using it in multiplayer, because for many of the multiplayer camo challenges, you would be completing them all simultaneously just by using the crossbow normally in multiplayer, but only if you have all of the camo challenges unlocked already. So instead of wasting your time struggling through the levels in multiplayer and only getting a little bit of camo progress at a time because the other challenges aren't unlocked yet, I'd say go to zombies, max it out, then when you go to multiplayer, you will fly through those camo challenges. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on the R1 Shadowhunter. As for my thoughts on this, I actually find it very enjoyable to use this. It's a great change of pace, it's a nice way to challenge yourself. The crossbow is actually very good at doing what it does. It's not the most versatile weapon out there, but it's just a fun challenge sort of weapon that I enjoy using. On top of this, I actually consider this to be like the best shotgun in the game right now. Even though it's not technically a shotgun, it outperforms the shotguns in close quarter situations, as long as you're only dealing with one enemy and as long as you're accurate with that shot. Of course, those are just my thoughts. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about the R1 Shadowhunter so far in Cold War's multiplayer? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you kind of indifferent? Just let me know those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.